My name's Logan Yates. I work here at Blackbeard Fab, and I've been here about 2.5 years. This is kind of the start of my fabrication journey. So I've always wanted to do a rat rod build. I started shopping around for side-by-sides. I wanted to get into that. Right around that time, Mike was building his 56 Volkswagen Bug that everybody's seen. We started getting this idea together, just change it up, make something different and cool. I started out with a 1927 Model T, pulled it out of the mud about a year and a half ago. Bought a wrecked 2019 Can-Am X3 motor. We got that shipped over here from the East Coast and started building it. Main chassis is made out of 120 wall 1.75 inch tubing. So this build started out with the body just sitting up on jack stands and rolling tires over to it and just really getting the proportions right, seeing where we wanted to stretch it out, making sure it didn't look funky with the tires way out front. From there I started building all the bulkheads for the suspension. That way our wheelbase was set, and from there we started connecting it with tubes. And while I was doing that, I wanted to integrate the structure of it so that it flowed with the body. I didn't want it to be scabbed on, I didn't want it to be too blocky. Keeping in mind good structure, but I wanted it to flow. So we've integrated the original Model T steps into the rock sliders. The cage follows the body really tight. Gives you as much room as you can since these things are so narrow. As far as the rest of the build goes, we had to balance out where things were going to mount due to the lack of space. So that created a lot of design challenges, making all that work together. So the suspension on this is the suspension off of a 4-seater Can-Am. It's the 3-inch coilover remote reservoirs in the rear and then coilovers in the front. So it's as beefy as you can get for Can-Am stuff. That's important because of the weight we're carrying. Everything's built a lot stronger. There's no plastics. All the bulkheads are double shear. Everything's just really beefy, so we needed enough suspension to handle all of that. So CA Tech was really nice, sponsored this build. We got their front arms, their tie rods, their trailing arms, and the radius rods. That's what helped get all of our proportions too, is having those. Start mocking up where wheelbases are going to be, how the suspension needs to cycle so that everything's clearing in the body, and kind of what room we have to work with there. The wheelbase on this machine's 113 inches and then just stock width, 72 inch. We also integrated the winch out of the RCs, so it's got the full winch setup in the front. It's got the locking front diff in it, so it's fully rock capable. For fuel, we built 2 separate fuel tanks using a stock sending unit. And so we had somebody machine out a collar, aluminum collar that would fit into our tank that accepts that stock pump so that all our gauges and everything work. So we get about 13.5 gallons of fuel out of it, which is more than stock by, I believe, 2 gallons. The small pod right here, the steering linkage actually goes through the fuel cell in one spot. All you have to do is pull that rod out, pull the panel, and the tank slips out the side if you have a crack or you need to drain it or service it or whatever. The other side just unbolts and pulls straight back out into the cab. As far as cooling goes, I moved the radiator to the rear due to space issues in the front. The design of all the water lines had to reverse from a stock setup. So all the lines went backwards to the thermostat, and then I kind of rerouted everything. I also added in a heater core into it, so I had to tee off of the lines coming in and out of the pump. So I have an in-cab heat as well. As far as wiring goes, I just have the stock 2-seat harness laid in there. Josh Sage with Must Be Nice Performance helped me out a lot with programming the keys and everything. He's able to hook up to it and set all that stuff for me. The battery sits behind the seat. Similar locations for everything as far as stock. I made a little pocket in the back that holds like the voltage regulator and the battery and your ECM. The exhaust is similar routing to stock setup. I cut everything off past the expansion joint and did it all 2.5-inch stainless steel. And I brought that all the way around with 2 resonators that come out of the opposite side right here. As far as all the intakes go, Can-Am has a lot of air being pulled from a little box, and there's a lot of plumbing going on. So that was also a challenge as far as design goes. So you want your clutches to have fresh air, clean air. You don't want it pulling from your rear tire area. And then you have obviously your engine intake. You have your intercooler pulling from back there. So I vented everything up through the rear panels. Above the engine, it's all fully enclosed. So then all the clutch vents are covered in frog skin, so it just keeps dirt, some heavy doses of water out of there. As far as the engine mounts to the rear part of the chassis, we put couplers in there. So if you ever have engine issues, you just unhook all your lines, your electrical, and undo the couplers, and you can put it up on a car lift or a jack and pretty much just drop the motor out. Originally, I had stock Can-Am seats sitting in it, just the bucket seats on the sliders, and kind of worked. The outside bolster was hitting the body, and the inside bolster was hitting the passenger seat as well. It was just way too tight. So we started looking at bench seats, and PRP makes a really badass seat. They have custom width, so I went with that. It sits in there nice and tight, gives us extra room when you're harnessed in. You're pretty much shoulder to shoulder, but it's not uncomfortable. I used the factory Ford dash out of the Model T. I wanted to keep that. Try to keep as much rusty cool stuff as I could, because I can make panels, but at the end of the day, if I do too much of that, there's no body left. So, and the dash is still removable if you unplug everything. I have the stock gauge cluster out of the Can-Am set up on the steering wheel. That also played in with the mounting of the shifter, because when I roll forward, first with the bench seat, stock Can-Am shifter sits in between seats, so I had to figure out a new spot for it. We did all sorts of crazy stuff, like hung it from the ceiling, tried to put it on the side, put it super down low, and the best thing I found was putting it near vertical up by the dash. It's comfortable shifting through all the other gears, and that lets me rotate up. So that kind of tied in off the driveline tunnel. I made a nice aluminum center piece that covers all that electrical and stuff going through there. The whole cab is totally enclosed so far as the tub goes. It's all 80 thou aluminum on the bottom. It's all bolt-in basically. You could disassemble all of that. The Model T body can basically be taken off and this thing still exists. The body doesn't do anything for structure. Almost nothing mounts to it except for the dash. So all the floor pans go to the chassis. Seats mount to the chassis. There's no floor to the T itself. So in the front here, all we had was just the body. So we had to come up with a way to enclose all this to cover up all the fuel cells, the electronics and everything, just so dirt, wind, water isn't just blowing in on you, getting everything gross. And it also completes the look of the build. We kind of just created a forward bulkhead of everything that gave the sway bar, the steering, and all the suspension enough clearance to still cycle completely. And then we just hand formed all this 20 gauge steel to the shape of the body. It kind of just made it look how we thought it should look. Minimalistic and tight, but still appealing to the style of the car. And these are all Zeus fastened on, so you can pull a panel off really quick and inspect or do some wiring if you're adding in something. Coming in front of that, we have the front grille. We talked a lot about getting an actual grille in there, and with mock-up, they're big. They're just really big on this, especially with the cycle of the arms. I mean, they come up so high, and we still want good approach on all of our rock ledges and, you know, anything you're doing. I don't want to just smack bumper right away. I want the tires to be able to pick up on if it's a tree or a rock. So kept the bumper really minimalistic, kind of a racy, just push bar style. And then the front grille, we just started cutting out a cardboard template and holding it up there, and we're like, I think that's it. So we started cutting it out of steel, bead rolling the face of it. We put a little bit of a break in it just to give it some style. We leaned it back a little bit. Just it started looking better and better, and then it was all one piece. And it's just bead rolled and welded together on that corner. So that gave us clearance, as light a weight as we could get, gave us the look we wanted, and eventually this winch fairlead's going to be coming through there with its own mount off the chassis. So it's really just an aesthetics thing. Last weekend we went out to St. Anthony, Idaho dunes. It was its first trip off this property pretty much. First shakedown, first real shakedown other than sliding it around in the snow out in the driveway. First day, romped on it, took it kind of easy, waiting to see what wasn't happy, what was rattling loose. As the day progressed, I just kept mashing it harder and hitting all the bowls. My temp stayed good. The fans, I don't even think they ran until I stopped. That thing's getting so much airflow right now. The radiator's probably double what a stock one is, so. But it did really good. The only thing we found was when we jumped it, the rear part of the body wasn't clearanced enough for the trailing arms. So we had a little collision there, but it self-clearanced, and we know where to trim now. So future plans, I want to get it fully enclosed. We have the back half of a Model A truck we're going to use. So the back half's going to go onto the roof, and I'm going to attach it. There's going to be some sheet metal work, but I'm going to attach it, and the rear window hole is going to be the inlet for the radiator and all the intercooler and everything else sucking in air. There's going to be a little bit of a scoop up there, and then building off forward of that Model A rear, I'll have Model A cab corners that are going to run down the side. That's going to give me a nice spot to weld in a structure for a rag top. We want to put a rag top in this. Visibility, it's nice to get fresh air. You know, if it's raining outside, you can close it up and you're all dry inside. We're going to do a glass windshield. Plan is to have wipers on it, kind of integrated into the visor. Somebody brought up that I should call it Stanley, and I thought that was pretty fitting. And then came to realize that the founder of Radiator Springs Off Cars, I believe, the movie, is called Stanley, and he's kind of like an old Model T, so it kind of fits good.
Yes, Stanley's alive.
Mike Carell, owner of Blackbeard Fab, he's really what made this dream come true. He kind of popped it in my head a little bit, and he let it grow, and he's let me use all his tools, his shop. I've been out here almost every night, every weekend for the last year and a half, just grinding away, trying to get this thing to a completion point, and he's been really helpful throughout the whole build. He's always super creative, good ideas. Anytime you run into a brick wall where you're like, I don't know what to do here, he's always got an idea. So I appreciate him for that and helping bring this thing to life. CA Tech sponsorship brought this build to a whole nother level with their arms. They're just so beefy and nice high clearance, everything about it just fits this build. Ibex sending the clutch kit. That's going to help out a lot with tire change differences, going into the sand, all that. We can fine tune our power. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you enjoyed this build. Stay tuned for what Blackbeard Fab's gonna cook up next.